Very good.
So what about this feminine mind then? I was thinking maybe we start by describing the feminine and the masculine. I know many of you have done the courses in the center, and we do touch on the feminine and the masculine. And it's been part of our discussion in the societies for, is it 10 years, 15 years or something, 20 years? We've been talking about the feminine and the masculine. So it's nothing new in a sense for many of us, but still we can all always have a personal take on what the masculine and feminine can do for us. And I suppose we start from the understanding that all of us, men and women, have masculine and feminine qualities in us. So we're not talking men and women here tonight. We're talking about two powers within each one of us. So how do you understand the masculine and the feminine?
You know, I was just sitting at the back. Oh, hello everyone, by the way. I was sitting at the back and talking to a wonderful lady called Camilla, and I was just reflecting on my own childhood and my perceptions as a child. And I think that throughout the course of our own life, as we progress from being a baby to a child to an adolescent, different qualities take a different lead at different times in their lives. And since childhood, I was always called a tomboy. Do you know what a tomboy is?
No, I don't know what tomboy is.
It's just an expression to say, even though she's a girl, she behaves like a boy. And I had this obsessive fascination with fast cars, with Black Hawk helicopters, because we used to have a family friend who actually had this wonderful black sleek helicopter, and he would land it in the back lawn when he'd come and see us. And whenever I'd see this thing, and one day he took us in it, and he took us right above into the skies, and it was full moon, and he just hovered the helicopter. And it was a beautiful thing, and I remember being obsessed with this for a couple of days. You know, it wasn't the dolls or the clothes, but it was just a good quality car and a really nice helicopter that did it for me. And then much later, as I kind of progressed and grew up, and as I found myself evolving into this kind of a role, you know, where I am not only practicing meditation, but I'm teaching meditation. And I'm also in a role that requires more sustaining. Then I remember feeling, I need some space. And I remember the first time I actually enjoyed going for a walk in the garden and smelling the roses. I would have never done that before. It just wasn't part of my makeup. It was just, where do I have to get to and how quickly can I get there? And then suddenly, there was a part of me, because of the role I was in, that just required me to just be in the moment and just smell a flower and just appreciate the beauty. And I had always poo-pooed that, you know, no. And so I can see in retrospect how there is a balance and an imbalance that happens when you over-associate or overuse one of the qualities. And I think very essentially, and you can do your own research in this area, you know, I find that the part of me that operates with the feminine qualities is very intuitive. It's very resourceful. It's quite creative. You know, the mind works in creative ways. And it's not fixed. It's like water. You know, if something comes, I'll find a way around it. It's like nothing's impossible when I'm using that part of myself. It's quite empathetic, actually. And it's also willing to be present. I think one of the strengths of a feminine mind is that it has the ability to be comfortable with chaos and disorder. Whereas when I have been overly associated with my masculine side, there's a drive, which means I have to get from A to B, and God help anybody who gets in my way. Right? So there is a sense of accomplishment, achievement, and I'm not saying either is bad or good, it's just what is needed at the right time. It's a bit like taking off an item of clothing. If you're going out in the evening, you wear evening wear. If you in the day, you wear day wear. So I noticed that the masculine side of me is much more systematic, much more requires, is used to form and function. Clarity is a very dominant, intellectual clarity, I think, is a very dominant aspect of the masculine mind. So for me, there's like the part of me that's empathetic, that's soft, that's a form of the feminine intelligence, that's more fluid, and you can't put a form to it, right? And yet there's another part of me that's the masculine that you can put a form to. It's a very overt intelligence. It can assess something, conceptualize something very quickly outside, create a model, create a direction. It has a spatial awareness, And the feminine is more kind of willing to go with the flow, in the moment. And often in my own life, it's been about, when do I use what? When do I be what? And yes, admittedly, when I have perhaps not been balanced, then one dominates. And more often than not, because of my title since childhood, it's often the masculine that dominates. So I can end up being a little bit like a bull in a china shop, right? Where you just keep driving and keep going, but lose complete sensitivity of other people's feelings around you. So I think that's just a learning for me. It's just maintaining a delicate balance.
Because when you described your childhood, you were thinking that the feminine qualities is not so, you didn't appreciate them, or they are not
That's
so
right.
They are not so good as the masculine, because you're coming from the masculine.
I think it's because they're not overtly, if you like, quantifiable.
Yeah.
And when you grow up in a world, especially in the Indian culture, where success depends on how many degrees you've got behind your name, it's quantifiable. That as a woman or as a young girl, importance is not given to the more fluid intelligence that lies beneath the surface. So you don't grow up believing this is a power, but it is a power.
But how can we move away from that mindset that one is better than the other? That if you come from a masculine background, that the masculine is better, or the opposite. How do we move away from the mindset that one is more valid or better than the other? And did life force you to appreciate the qualities, or did it come from within?
I think the practice of meditation plays an important role in regulating these qualities. Because the paradox is that we all have masculine and feminine qualities and tendencies. And yet, why is our world not balanced? There's something not working here. There's this regulatory piece not in place, or we're not aware of it. So beyond these qualities, what actually drives a quality to activate is awareness. And the paradox is that for me to actually use both male and female qualities within the soul, within myself, I have to go beyond the awareness of the body. Because the moment I think I'm a female, it actually blocks my ability like I'm a female body, then it inhibits me and it blocks my ability to use my feminine qualities freely. Because when I think I'm a female, then I become conscious someone else is a male. And there's a higher sense of contrast and perhaps attraction, which is not a bad thing, but within that attraction there's a likelihood of me losing my own natural expression because I'm trying to use and manipulate a part of me to draw someone else. It's not coming from a place of genuine self-respect. So the paradox in my meditation has been that I have to actually understand who I am beyond just the surface of this body as an identity. Because the qualities, both of these qualities, they don't lie in the body. They're not in my feet or my hands or my face, but they lie in the spirit. And so the moment I take some time to connect with spirit, in that moment, the quality that I need emerges. And then for me, it's not, life isn't about a complicated balance of, well, what should I do here and what should I do there and how should I work here? No, it's just a very sustaining, a very deep connection with myself at the level of spirit. And when I feel spiritual, I feel connected to myself inside, then I'm not inhibited by the grossness of masculine and feminine energy.
But still, I know if you've been meditating since you were 4, you know you were a soul and not the body. This you've been practicing for many, many years. But still, what made you develop the feminine qualities after that?
Oh yeah,
and maybe you can give an example or something, because you know we know we're soul and body, but still it can take time.
Well, I reckon I was definitely a male in my last birth, because you know most times they have a joke in the Brahma Kumaris. They say that the brothers were sisters and the sisters were brothers, you know, because often the women in leadership positions seem to have such very naturally masculine qualities. And so I tended to have more of those growing up. And when I started to enter a more sustaining role, then there were 2 practices particularly I had to be conscious of. One was the practice of silence and listening. Right?
Listening.
Yeah, suspending my intellect. Because using my intellect is an overly, it was overused, and it is a masculine dimension, intellectual power. And I found that one of the things I had to do was actually suspend the intellect, to be able to create space for intuition to come in and do its work.
How do you suspend your intellect? Sounds very difficult.
Sounds difficult to suspend your intellect.
Suspend your intellect. I mean, what is it?
Well, think about it.
Master of suspense. That's
think
Alfred
about
Hitchcock,
it. You
isn't
know,
it?
when you sit in a gathering, okay, and there's a group of people speaking, what happens in your head? You start to have a mental dialogue. Well, I don't like what they said. Or why did they say that? Or why should... I just won't have those thoughts, right? I won't let my intellect go down the thought of even interpreting what someone has said. It's a training. So it does take training.
So if you say to your thoughts, don't go down this road, they don't go down that road.
No, I don't say that to myself.
What do you say?
I just don't even get to the point where I have a thought. Like, I'll just sit there and I'll pretend like I'm a blank slate, because it doesn't work for me to say, don't do this. And this is actually a very good principle to bear in mind. I'm just taking a bit of a detour here. That if you tell yourself, don't do this, your subconscious hears, do this. Right? So you say to yourself, don't get angry, and all your subconscious hears is, get angry. So those who try and practice not getting angry find themselves getting angrier. But the opposite of that is, well, I want to be peaceful. Now that the subconscious can accept and work with. And it's much more constructive, and my energies are much more focused. So for me, when I sit down in a gathering, I adopt an image of just being a blank slate, which I can hold, right? I'm just a blank slate. I'm a white sheet. And I just let myself held in that space. And as I hold in that space and I listen, I start to hear wisdom. Not everybody is a great communicator. Not all of us can always communicate clearly what we're feeling, when we're feeling. And sometimes, we may get distressed when we're communicating our ideas because we're trying to make the other person understand. And I've often found in those situations, especially when someone is distressed or getting a bit upset because they can't communicate, my listening has helped me understand their intention. And once I understand their intention, then we start a constructive conversation. But had I not let myself be a white sheet, then I would have probably started judging and interpreting their behavior and losing sight of perhaps a very good intention they might be wanting to communicate. So that for me has been one particular practice, very, very deep listening and being present in the listening to see the connections. And the second thing has been dialogue.
Dialogue.
Yeah. I remember consciously moving from a place where I thought about things and I quickly packed them up into an answer, right? So I'd ask myself a question and say, well, yeah, I know, but it's this, 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 and this. It's like you just logically bring yourself to an answer. And then I used to stop myself there. I said, no, Gopi, don't just pack it up according to your limited experience. Just hold the question. I would take that question and I would start a dialogue with someone. So what do you feel about this? What's your feeling on this topic? And I would just be open to a giving and receiving of energy. Yeah. Now, both of these practices, if you like, were mechanisms for me to activate the feminine qualities of intuition, of empathy, of vision and feeling and nurture and care, And it was a practice. I have to remind myself of it because the masculine part of me so kind of wants everything packed up in a nice, neat little box that you lose the opportunity to learn. That's why I'm so interested in learning. So tonight, somebody asked me, are you nervous? And I said, well, I'm not nervous because I'm not expecting an outcome. I used to be. In a masculine quality, you expect an outcome. And so you're always on edge, wondering, am I going to get this outcome or not? But when you're using the feminine quality, you're in a very fluid place, right? You're comfortable with whatever outcome emerges, but the journey is more important of how you arrive there.
So listening and holding the energy in a dialogue or conversation, holding the energy, giving and receiving of energy, those two practices have helped you to enter the feminine world.
And the practice of just spending time with myself in silence so that I could connect with myself as a soul, because I'm a very active person. And, my day starts at 3:45 in the morning. Sometimes I don't see my bed till 11 o'clock at night. And there's people to meet, there's projects to run, there's, a multitude of things. And I know how quickly it is to lose yourself in action. And I know how when I lose myself in action, I can become overly masculine when it's not necessary, or I can become overly feminine when it's not necessary. You know, I lose balance. So I find that the practice of silence, moments of silence throughout my day, before I start something, when I finish something, at the beginning of my day, at the end of my day, they just help me reconnect.
So a moment of silence is just sitting and meditating? Is it going for a walk, or is it having a cup of tea or an ice cream? Or, I mean, what's a moment of silence for you?
Well, yeah, I suppose a moment of silence can mean many things to people. Well, there's one part of silence where you just indulge in your physical senses, right? So you have an ice cream because your tongue wants to be satisfied. You go for a walk because the muscles in your legs are twitching. But I think the spiritual need is about allowing a space to be created. You know, it's a little bit like I take this glass of water and I'm shaking it, but then I just leave it alone. I just leave it alone. And then after a while, it just settles and it becomes still. And there's a part of us, very, very deeply, and this is a capacity in the mind of stillness, that if you just leave it alone, it will eventually come back to its original state of stillness. So I just leave myself alone.
Yeah. So before you said that sometimes if you don't take this moment of silence, you become over masculine or become over feminine. So how is over feminine for you? Because you described the over masculine before.
Well,
but
I think it's more using the wrong things at the wrong time. So I can be overly aggressive when I don't need to be. You can push a point when you actually don't need to be. People are listening. It's like you lose a sense of what's needed at that time. Yeah? That for me is that. And it's interesting because overly feminine, I think it's not stepping into your power enough. You know, relying too much on the fluidity because it's safer to be in the background, when actually what's required of you is to step up and be visible. Right? And no, I don't feel like it. So I'd just rather just do my bit in the background and stay in the background, you know?
Maybe that description can take us to the next kind of question, because now we described a little bit about personal model of feminine, masculine, what's happening inside us, but we thought we could also take it to an organizational level. I don't know if any of you work with at work where you have feminine qualities as dominant in your organization. Maybe you have. And Gopi was here describing your day, all you do in a day, and that maybe take us to Brahma Kumaris as an organization, because you and me are sitting here and we are both coordinators or leaders of our own centers, our own wings, if you like. And Brahma Kumaris has in their constitution in India that it should be women in the top leadership of Brahma Kumaris. It's written there on paper that the committee and worldwide should be women. And organization started in 1936, and it was started by a man. It had to be a man at that time, historically, but Brahma then, he encouraged, and I don't know if he pushed, but he did probably push them forward a bit, saying, okay, you step up on the scene, you do the teaching, you do the leadership. And that was very, very unusual of its kind at that time. So now we have an organization, we have 8,000 centers in 110 countries, all voluntary basis, and it's led by women in many places. But it's not a feminist organization. I mean, it's not. Half of the people coming are men, half are women. It's like here tonight. And is my question to you then, is it because Brahma Kumaris is expanding so much because it is a general spiritual need in the society? Meditation, reflection is a need. Many other spiritual organizations are also growing rapidly because there is a need. Or has it got to do with the female leadership?
I think I just want to go back to the origins of the university. I felt that in 1936, Brahma Baba tuned in to the need of the hour. That at this time in our global transition, a particular quality had to lead. And he recognized that as the feminine quality, right? Because most religious frameworks were being run on dogma and ritual and structure to a point where the glue was missing. And he understood very deeply that for people to reconnect spiritually, spirituality had to be exemplified, it had to be nurtured, it had to be demonstrated, it had to be felt, it had to be emerged, it had to be enabled. It didn't have to be directed and structured. There was enough of that. So he was very smart in actually recognizing that at that time and really encouraging women or the feminine qualities, even to lead with that energy. Now, that was a very radical step in the mid-30s in India, when women weren't even allowed out of their homes, they weren't even allowed an education. It was a second-class status to be a woman, and suddenly this person comes along and starts empowering women. Who on earth is he? So it created quite a revolution in India at that time. And in fact, a lot of the movement of the Brahma Kumaris in India changed the landscape for women's rights in India in many ways, and contributed to that movement. And now, as we see in the world, you were telling me, if you look in a newspaper, what are the job descriptions? They're asking for people who are caring, who are nurturing, who are, it's people are beginning to recognize that there is a glue missing. Change and transformation is not about spreadsheets and Gantt charts and goals and, the bottom line and the top line and a numerical process. But there is a powerful glue that is needed to inspire the cooperation and galvanize the goodness in people. And that glue, where is that glue going to come from? And when you think about the feminine energy, you look at the home. Often the mother is the center of the home. It's like in a beehive, the queen bee. It's like the queen essence. Everything just gravitates around the feminine energy, I mean, I'll be a bit grosser. Sometimes women are at the center of their husbands' lives. Women are at the centers of the family. It's a very powerful, magnetic, gluing role. Without the feminine quality and presence, the glue's missing. And what we need right now, we might have some great structures, we might have some great plans, but there's little glue. There's little enjoyment in the interaction to accomplish something. And I'm just thinking about the style of leadership within the Brahma Kumaris, right? We don't hire people, we don't fire people. Everyone are volunteers. Some are qualified to do what they do, some are not qualified to do what they do. Each one contributes to their own capacity. We don't charge for anything, and we don't run the what looks like an organization based on charts and spreadsheets and, what do you call those, how do you say, goals and rates, that this is how target goals and etc. And strategy plans. And yet, this enormous movement of close to 1 million people is operating in 120 countries worldwide with 5,500 centers. And we can generate programs like this. So, how does this work? And this is where I saw in the leadership, especially, I didn't know Brahma Baba, but I know the second generation down. We call them the daddies, and it means elder sister. So I remember watching Daddy Kumarka, one of the second in command administrators. She was like a mother, Her title is an administrative head. And of course, there are lots of responsibilities, financial, legal, that come with that. But yet, she held that role with the consciousness of being a world mother. So you know what her style of leadership would be? Keep herself available to everyone. She would sit in the courtyard, in the sun. She would be available to everybody in the organization, from those at the highest levels of leadership to those who were just walking by and walking in. For a chat, how are you? What's going on? It's amazing. And yet, balanced with that, there's a discipline. There's a spiritual discipline in place that allows something to be created. It's not just, let's just sit and have a cup of tea and keep talking and not think about where we need to go. But a level of spiritual discipline allows us to create something new. So, for example, I remember about maybe 6 or 7 years ago, she was particularly inspired to hold these big mega events all over India for 100,000 people at each event, right? We struggle to get 200 people in the West to an event, let alone 100,000. So you can imagine, as an inspiration, because she really felt we had to step up sharing this vibration and message. So she set a goal and she said, okay, go back to your cities, organize these mega events on harmony and unity, and 100,000 people should benefit. And it happened. All the major cities around India. So, whilst in the world there is often the understanding that spirituality is for those who've checked out of life, I would say that the Brahma Kumaris demonstrate something completely opposite. It's more the how to become more purposeful in life, rather than busy and get nowhere, but much, much more purposeful and focused and benevolent, so that you are generating. Because you could say you're spiritual, but there's no need for you to host this public program. Why bother? So there is this element and dimension of generating my silence, generating those pure feelings, developing my spirituality, but balancing that with discipline. Because
what's the discipline she was keeping? What discipline you talking?
Well, I'm just looking at it at a very practical level of her lifestyle. From looking after her mind at a practical level, being careful of what she ate. She had a routine. She would wake up in the morning. She would have 45 minutes of a meditation. She would spend time generating and studying spiritually to begin the day. And then after we'd finished the study session, one of the things she'd do is she'd call the core group of every department functioning, because our headquarters in Madhuban is run in a very decentralized way. There's 72 departments running this enormous thing. So she would call the core group of each department. They'd sit in the sun and she'd listen. She'd have 45 minutes with them. She'd listen. Tell me, where are you at? What do you need? you know? So I always witnessed people leaving her presence with the feeling like they had been seen, they had been heard. And that was her gift. She was able to step beyond the superficial superficialities and really feel the pulse of a person and satisfy a person. And I think a mother can do that.
So Gopi, she's describing Kumarka Daddy, and she's not here with us any longer. She left the body 2008 or something. And now our boss is, or administrative head is Daddy Janki, and she's 96. And Gopi actually worked quite closely with Daddy. So you just described the other woman, Kumarka, as availability and listening and motherly qualities as her main leadership qualities. But how would you describe your boss now, Daddy Janki?
Is this being recorded?
It's put online.
I'll only tell you if you promise not to tell her. Daddy Janki is unique. This is what I love about the leadership in this organization, is that it's so distinctive. You know, spirituality isn't a clone. You know, and that's what I love, is you can be you, I can be me. Daddy Kumarka can be her, Daddy Janki can be her. And Daddy Janki is more like an army general, right? She is extremely, I wouldn't say efficient, but there's no waste inside Daddy. No waste at all. So she's extremely fast. And keeping up with her is a challenge, even though she's 96 years old, right? She's processed something quicker than I can even wake up to sometimes. And she operates on a no-waste policy. So you're not allowed to be self-indulgent in her. You know, with Daddy Kumarka, I could sit around and let myself be a little child. You know, and she'd pamper me, and she'd stroke my face and my hair, and isn't it lovely to be loved like that? And then Daddy Janki's like, come on, off your backside, get a move on. You know, it's like this kind of army general, pull yourself together and move. But it's accompanied with a lot of love and good wishes. You know, but she, for me, is an incredible example of a leader who is able to demonstrate how to handle expansion with spirituality, not with structure. Because she embodies, she has taught me personally how you need to be as a person to enable natural order around you. Because I remember, you know, most times conflict, a faith-based organization, and any faith-based organization, will always have a degree of conflict. Because you've got a group of people on a journey who have some very high ideals. And inevitably, there's going to be some dissonance or conflict experienced when you're trying to match those high ideals with everyday life, right? So imagine not one, not two, not three, but 1 million people on a journey trying to do that matching. And you know what it takes just between us when you're trying to be good, what that creates inside you. So, of course, you'll get a degree of conflict. And often the first reaction in conflict is to try and bring structure and order. We go to that direction because we're so afraid of this messy situation. And she has really taught me how to be in a situation like that. That just because I go and create a structure for a team, it doesn't mean the real issue is solved. Because what is the real issue? The real issue is a deeply spiritual one, where people in a situation have lost their spiritual compass, and so as a result gotten involved into blame dynamics, competition dynamics, comparison dynamics. And what often such situations require is a being or a person that can demonstrate a spiritual compass again, right? That become a reference point so that people see how they need to be again. That's deep. And it takes me a while.
How do you then
be
be in a messy situation without creating structure? I mean, what do you do? Or what
Structure
do you be?
is a secondary thing. I think the first thing that's very important is to be able to just listen. Listen, but not just listen to the stories and the blame and all of that rubbish that comes with it. You know, there's always a story behind everything. But the most important thing for spiritual power to work is to create an atmosphere of blamelessness.
Blamelessness.
Blamelessness. You cannot resolve anything on the basis of blame, because all you do is just end up creating victim-oppressor. It's a false justice mentality, and it just encourages more and more violence, an attitude of violence. So often for me, the first question for people within a conflict situation, and I'm talking within the organization because that's the amount of people I work with, is that I'll listen and I'll just ask them one question. At what point in this process did you feel you lost connection with your spirituality and your compass? At what point? Go back to that point and start from that point again. And it's almost like putting up the mirror again to each person in a situation for them to reconnect back with the point when they lost touch with their spiritual compass. So each person then becomes fully responsible and proactive for the situation, right? It's not just him or her, it's me. And as we start introducing that spiritual health first, then the dialogue gets easier. Then the negotiation gets easier. Then the understanding gets easier. Because I'm not coming from a place of blame. I'm not coming from a place of being a victim. I've found my spiritual position again in this situation. So I'm coming from a place of quiet power and self-respect.
So how do we bring these qualities back into the world? Now we're talking about Brahmakumaris, but if you look at the biggest organization we have, I suppose it's the world, isn't it? The world community is a big organization. So how do we bring these feminine qualities into the world we live in?
I think at any level of reality you may be in, you know, it could be in your family context, it could be in your professional context, it could be in a personal context. The first priority is to create a space that allows others to contribute. So it's never me first. Yeah, it's always you first. What do you think? What do you think? How do you feel? What do you think? You know, this kind where the approach is that everybody's allowed to be part of this. That's really important. And then from that point, what's important is that you also make meaning together, collective meaning. You know, and especially in an organizational context, I find this is very important. What tends to happen, you know, if we're running projects or in organizations, people have like multitudes of ideas, you know, from all over the place, here, lots and lots and lots of ideas. And then they take all those ideas and everybody starts acting, and everybody goes everywhere, right? And then initially it's like all soda fizz, you know, the pop, and it's exciting, and then very quickly the fizz finishes and everything becomes flat. And suddenly your project has run out of steam. Yeah, it's not sustainable anymore. Because I often find that the balancing factor is that it's great everybody has all these ideas, but what's important is, well, what do all these ideas mean for us at this point in time? Yeah? This is, again, the first aspect is the feminine, the opening, the sharing. The second is the masculine, the meaning-making. It's like taking these ideas and starting to put them into some kind of a funnel to understand and land on what are the signals, what are the few things that we need to be focusing on at this time that are important for us collectively. And then from that place, okay, how can we now make it practical? Yeah? And then stepping into action. Because then your action is focused, because it's more ordered and constructed. You know, it's not just a random explosion of ideas that's unsustainable. So the need to slow down is really important. You know, and sometimes some situations require brainstorming and an opening. Some situations require meaning making. You know, I find myself in different situations throughout the day. Some situations require the third phase, which is creating an order, you know, and some situations just require simple action. Just get out there and do it. And so depending on the situation and the circumstance, the group, the person, you know what's needed at that time. Does that help?
Yeah, it sounds like a very like a little formula, isn't it? Last night we had a session in the Center by Healing. Very nice session, how to heal oneself. And you asked the room and the group to create a little formula. And now you were saying that we start with the feminine, because that's we start with the feminine principle of opening up, including everyone, making yourself available, and from there you go on to the conceptualizing, creating meaning, which is more the masculine, and from that you go into action.
To go to order.
To go to order.
And then action. Yeah. Because then your action is actually got the weight of a collective force behind it. You're not just going solo on a field. And I think that's what we're recognizing in the world today, that there is no one person who has the answers. No one person. There is no one savior in the world, right?
I heard an expression, if you want to go fast, you go alone. If you want to go far, you go together.
Yeah, and if you look at an arrow, you know Genghis Khan?
Yes.
You know Genghis Khan, right?
Yeah.
Now this is probably not the most constructive of examples, but, you know, he conquered most of Asia and, you know, came to the doorstep of Europe. But you know what his policy was, even though it was rallied around violence? In Mongolia, all the tribes were split up. And how he managed to unite them was he would show them one arrow, and then he would break the arrow. And then he would pick up a whole bunch of arrows, and they were unbreakable. It was a psychological phenomenon to help them understand that if you stay together, it's your greatest protection. Now, the paradox is that our idea of collaboration has always been non-spiritual, around a common enemy. You know, we'll only get together when there's an enemy to fight. That's how world wars start. But in spiritual terms, it's cooperation, you know? And I see this instinct coming out, the earthquake in Japan. And there's a particular town in Japan in which one of our friends was, and we hadn't heard from her for a few days. So after about maybe 3 days, we received an email, and she described the scene. And it was so touching for me because she talked about how there was no electricity left in the village. 3/4 of it was just demolished flat. And she and 10 other people were sleeping in a small room, perhaps the size of this stage. And she said every morning, these men in green would walk around the doorsteps, leaving parcels of food and drink. She said at night they would spill out, the stars would be there, they'd have open fires, they'd share stories, and it was like a community was emerging out of the rubble, out of the cinders, out of the burnt ashes. There was a powerful community spirit sustaining it. And she said, for the first time in my life, I feel we are one. You know? So that capacity can be activated right now. It doesn't have to wait until a crisis happens for it to be activated. You know, that's what it means to create glue. Because the strength of a wall is never how many bricks there are in it. It's the quality of cement that holds the bricks together.
So what is your, and before we open up for questions, then what is your take or your advice then to everyone how to activate that glue? How to become a...
Learn how to meditate. Powerfully.
Many do meditate already, I think.
Yeah. You know what? Things are getting worse. People often ask me this question, how often should I meditate? And I say, well, how often do you have breakfast? You know, because just as you need physical nourishment just to keep the body alive, and your supplements and your daily exercise, this is crucial for mental stability. And the rate at which things are going on around us and breaking down, being created, your mental stability is critical. And for me, it's my meditation practice that keeps my mind focused and stable no matter what is going on around me. You know, so that at least there's a degree of self-respect and self-control. So, as a minimum, you need to be meditating every day. 15 minutes in the morning, minimum, and 15 in the evening. If I was to prescribe that now, that's what I would say now. Gone is the time when it's just a once a week pastime or fashion. It's not a fashion anymore. It's a necessity. If you want to start living life, really living life, and being a proactive citizen, then this is absolutely critical.
Because we talked the other day of one is to have a survival energy level. You know, managing. We ask somebody, how are you? And they say, I'm surviving. Jag overlever. I'm coping, you know, I'm okay. So what's the minimum for survival? But then the next level is not only to survive, but is to enjoy life, to create something together with, to be proactive, to be out there, to be available, to be a creator, to...
Well, your energy catalyzes life. You know? You may not necessarily have to be a go-getter in a physical sense, but just as a person, your energy catalyzes things. It creates space for others to be alive. Like the sun. The sun sits still. You know? It doesn't keep dancing here and there and everywhere. It's in one place. And yet, the pumping of its vibration nourishes us. You know?
So 15 minutes, is that survival or next step?
Oh, that's basics. That's a basic starter. Because that's how much time it takes for the mind to settle. You need to. It's not enough.
15 minutes is only for mind to settle. And
for the
after
mind,
that,
and then another 5 minutes to just enjoy the experience that comes.
And then?
And then you start your day. Right? Because you'll start your day with a protection of pure feelings, with the right frequency of vibration. And that's your greatest protection. And then you can stay clean in a day. You don't let rubbish stick to you. Because in spirituality, like attracts like. So if you start your day off in a bad mood, your whole day stays like that. You know, you end up grumpy the whole day. This one's a problem, that one's a problem. This went wrong and that went wrong and that. Try it and see. And then, when you really start your day at a positive frequency, somehow your awareness is protected from the rubbish. So it's not to say there won't be challenging situations, there will be, but you feel like you're moving through them like pulling a hair through butter, very easily. So you're unaffected by the end of the day. Okay.
I thought I'll walk down now and give the mic to you. So I have I'm multitasking here tonight. So I think we open. I have a question for you, but let's see if I have space for it. So I will walk down now, and I will hand over the mic to those who want to ask something or have some reflections. Or so let's see what happens. You hold the hand up. Does it take a feminine or masculine mind to go first?
Both, either.
Both.
Depends how you feel.
2 hands, yes.
I just come in my thoughts about the situation on my work, where I have a colleague and we both are very masculine. He's masculine, I'm feminine. Somebody, I mean it. It's my manly colleague. And we come to have a disagreement. And our boss was also, we come to a meeting, and he chose side and showed that I am not with them. So I think, okay, I must use what I learn in meditation and try to cope the situation. And I just try to think good things about him, even I don't like him. And he start to get very sweet and talk nice, and so I think, what is happening? Because I don't want to talk with him, but I need to think good things about him. But it's not so easy, because I am also so manly, so masculine. But yes, I think I will try to be a little more feminine and to see how the things will change. But I'm not sure how to do it, because maybe they look at me and no, maybe she's crazy, or what she's doing now, or why she's doing this now. So I think what people, they will think about me if I show another side. Now they are used with me to be in small boxes, and we do, but what they will think, of course it's not necessary to think what they will think, but
I think a lot of people think that. Who here is not affected by how others think of them? Not affected by how others think of them.
Yes.
See, it's a big disease. It actually suppresses our ability to be real, because a big part of, and what I didn't talk about was touching about the role of ego in leadership. You know, what is the ego? It is a mask. It's an over-identification with something I'm not. So when I came back to the beginning of the talk, and I said to Sonia, an aspect of my ego is even to think I'm a female. I am a soul in a female body. but I am not the female body. There's a big difference. So it lets me be feminine when I want to be, masculine when I want to be. I won't feel inhibited. But the moment I become body conscious of me being a female, then all kinds of images and beliefs that come with the female, maybe meek, humble, quiet, I can't say anything, that are my cultural baggages, they inhibit me from being me. That's when I am not in my power. I'm acting like a helpless woman. And so for me, the activation has been be soul conscious. So it's not even, it's being aware of myself very deeply as a soul, an energy of goodness. And like you said, I want to have good thoughts for my sake also, and for that person's sake, and that to know that beyond all this rubber and flesh, there is just a sweet soul that just wants love. And it just opens up channels and rivers of compassion and mercy. It's a switch in consciousness. Yeah.
Thank you. Anyone else? We're all in balance? No? Laughing means yes?
Oh, that's great, eh? Nobody has questions.
Yes.
Okay.
In the beginning, you were talking about the masculine energy going from A to B. I heard it as something very destructive. Anything getting in that way would be destroyed. But as I hear you now, you have this masculine energy, but it's not destructive. So maybe you could say something more about that.
Thank you for pointing that out. I think an over-identification with your nature can lead to this, because a masculine quality as well as a feminine quality has a positive and negative side to it. So feminine qualities, the love can turn to jealousy. The sharing can turn to possessiveness. In a masculine qualities, clarity and a sense of clear direction can perhaps turn to insensitivity, where there isn't the awareness of other connections. And so when I was using it in that terms to describe me, it's often an imbalance in the expression of the quality that I was referring to. And I have found, actually, when I'm body conscious, then I can tend towards the more, I can start with a good use of the quality, but very quickly it can oscillate to the other side. But when I'm soul conscious, then there's a sense of detachment with how I am. So I can be who I am now, and I can say what I have to say, and the next minute I'm completely detached from it. I don't need an outcome. I don't need you to approve of me. I don't need you to like me. I don't need an outcome. So where we focus on wanting an outcome, that's what destroys the balance in our qualities. And so, yeah, I think each of the qualities do have their positive and negative expressions depending on what consciousness you're in. Because it's consciousness that activates qualities. It's awareness and consciousness that activates them.
Okay, I'm here. Yes.
I was just thinking, when there's so much stress in our world, would you say that's an imbalance in both the qualities or in one particular side? Because I was thinking, in our work, in our life, in our family life, our own orders of the day and evening, there's so much we have to attain and accomplish and manage, and there are deadlines all around us. And I was just wondering whether there's imbalance both on the feminine side and the masculine side, because there's a lot of stress in the world.
Absolutely. I go back to the first point. There is an imbalance. And it's not one is greater than the other. It's not. Both are out of balance. And why they're out of balance is because we are an increasingly body-conscious and materialistic conscious culture. So within that kind of a consciousness, your qualities can never be used in a pure way to bring benefit. They only ever become limited to the needs of the body. That's why we may start with a good intention, but very quickly it becomes polluted. Yeah, it's not easy for people now to sustain a selfless intention. Yeah, because so quickly the awareness and consciousness and needs of the body and self-protection instincts take over. So there is an imbalance, and I was just listening or reading an article about, one of Australia's top management gurus saying, well, women have to step up. And I thought, oh, okay. So, and it was almost like his statement was polarizing. Like the way he was saying it was, well, the men are the problem and the women have to step up. And I'm like, but that's the wrong paradigm to be working in. Because if women are not stepping up, why are they not feeling confident about their power? Yeah, don't buy into this polarity, victim-oppressor, because that's the world we've created based on the body. But when there is a spiritual perception, a spiritual consciousness, I cultivate this in my life, then 80% of the outcome in any situation is based on my attitude and the energy with which I do something. So I can do something and it's going to have a bigger impact if there's the right attitude behind it than if I do something with a limited attitude. And so a lot of this in life is about effectiveness rather than efficiency. Yeah, we try to be super efficient and try and organize ourselves on the surface, but miss out on the rest of the iceberg underneath the surface that's driving us. Our perceptions, our attitude, our feelings. They're powerful. And if you start working at this level, things will start to happen around you.
Yes, one question here. Yes, very good.
I'm just wondering if you've heard of the school of thought, which is, I think, started in Sweden, at least they're practicing it, where they're teaching young children, not differentiating between boys and girls. In fact, they, I think, are making, they don't say him or her, but they use another word to describe sort of like a generic sex or something. How would you, what are your thoughts about that? Because I believe, we each have masculine and feminine sides to us, but we are also the body that we are, and characterized by that body.
I'm not aware of the school of thought you're talking about, so I can't really comment on that. But what I can say is, it's not about neglecting your body. It's not about, holding a spiritual consciousness is about putting yourself back in position again and correcting your relationship with the body. So it actually, when you're in a positive frame of mind, the body becomes a gift. It becomes a precious gift given to me from God, that I can use for good and benefit in the world. It's not a vehicle of abuse. Yeah? So when I start to cultivate a spiritual position, I actually correct the relationship with my body again. Yeah.
Maybe I'll ask the last question then. This is from Robert. And he was asking me that, in a sense, Gopi, you're like us, like you've gone to school, you've gone to university, and I know you lived 14 years in Global Retreat Center, was it? Which is some of you have been there, it's a retreat center we have in England, Global Retreat Center. And there is 20 people living there, and they have visitors all the time, about 70 people coming, like on retreats. It's a very intense place. And now you travel like many other people, you work with project and leadership. So in a sense, yes. But on the other hand, you're like from another planet, Gopi.
I'm on another planet,
like from another planet.
I'm from another planet.
Because you've grown up in a family which been meditating, right? And you've been a yogi and meditator all your life, and you're not looking for partners or family or, in a sense, like the rest of us in here, people in here. So Robert's question was actually, when you step out on the street, what do you see through your eyes from this planet of yours?
I don't think anyone's ever asked me that question.
It's your last question.
I see a family that belongs to me. I see my brothers and sisters. I have a very deep feeling of belonging. And I know that it's not that I'm specifically needing to create a family, because I already feel I belong to a family. And so when I walk out on the streets, I feel like the earth is my home. I really do. And I feel like this is my family, which lets me sit up here and talk to you like my family, And so, and I think this is what's important, is it's unlimited. I know what drives me and what my meditation has done for me is it's created a very deep and powerful place of God's love and belonging. And I know that that's the glue that's so important to heal in our family. And so in many ways, the kind of unlimitedness of this feeling has always overtaken the limited feeling that perhaps I need to be attached to one person, or I need to be, looking after one person or looking after two people. It was always not easy for me to reconcile that, but this feeling that I belong satisfies me enormously, enormously. Because I think that, when you belong to God and you really feel that you love God and that God belongs to you, then you belong to everything that God belongs to. And so that's the feeling.
Okay. Maybe that's a nice note to start meditation, isn't it? Are we ready for a meditation? So maybe we can put some music on, Robert. But I think before the meditation, I'll just do a few practical announcements, and then we can just go home straight with that sweet feeling of meditation inside. Then Gopi will guide the meditation for us. But I just thought I'll mention to you that one of Gopi's teachers will come here in July, and so we'll have another public talk with Sister Sudesh from India, and she's coming here in July. It's a Thursday, 11th July, and this hall is going to be renovated, so we can't use it in the summer. This is why you have these windows of opportunity here. They're going to decide which color to have on the walls. It's a kind of big thing. They can't agree in the committee. So we will be in the library on Fredriksberg. But if you're on the mailing list, you will get an invitation. And those who are not on the mailing list, you can sign up at the back of the table if you like. And we also have this lecture series with Salman Ahmad, who is from India, a psychologist working here in Denmark. And we do talks at the library. I could actually speak in Danish. Vi holder foredrag på Danasvej bibliotek 2 søndage hver måned. Vi har sådan en foredragsserie om psykologi og spiritualitet og meditation. Og det kan I også læse på hjemmesiden. Og det her foredrag i aften, det lægger vi op på hjemmesiden. Ikke også, Robert? Det bliver spillet ind. Så hvis I bare klikker ind på vores hjemmeside, så kan I se foredraget igen. Og også de andre foredrag, vi har haft her i salen. Mange spændende ting. Det tror jeg var det. Ja. So I think that's it. So let's have some nice meditation. Kom, ja. Jeg skal læse lidt øjeblik.
So if you can, just sit upright so that your breathing isn't compromised and both feet on the floor in front of you. And let's take these few moments to become fully present. Become aware of the chair that you're sitting on. And allow your body to relax. These moments are precious for the self. And let your feet relax. Your knees, shoulders, arms, hands, and even muscles on your face. Slowly become aware of your breathing. As you quietly breathe in and out, the body continues to relax. And now, as the body becomes quieter, you slowly lose awareness of this physical costume. And become aware of yourself inside. as a living energy, a thinking energy, a feeling energy. It's like a current of energy. I step behind the mask of this body and connect with the energy that I am. And thoughts may come and go like clouds. And I become aware that I am even deeper than my thoughts. Like a pure essence of light, deep, deep inside. A subtle, soft light. Quietly looks out through these eyes, listens through these ears, I am the living flame in the temple of this body. And I ask myself, what have I been touched by this evening? What has opened up my heart? What pure feeling has been awakened? And I let that fill me. And I let that feeling or realization become a ray of light that I send out into the world. My pure feeling, my spiritual insight becomes a gift of light to the world. And in this silence, I become aware of another light at work. A supreme energy. A parent that has been watching over his children, his souls. A mother and father in one. as the ocean of love. The ocean of peace. And as I become aware of the Supreme Soul, I allow the energy of that unlimited ocean to fill me. And I become the child, pure, innocent, filled with joy and peace. Safe in the awareness that first and foremost, I am a child of God. And I rest in this eternal connection, knowing that it's only a thought away. Om Shanti.